Today we're learning Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah Perek Beis Halalcha Ches. Then we'll learn Tes, and then we'll learn Yud Mitzvah Hashem. These are all short. If you saw a rat, shenichlas lebeis bayis, go into a house, v'chavens v'piv. We'll go down to the Peirush, and if you saw an achbor go into a house, a mouse or a rat go into a house, and he has chametz. So you see this chametz in the mouth of the achbor. After he made the bedika, he has to check the house again. Pam shnia, second time. Aval pi, even though even if he finds crumbs, which would seem to indicate that the mouse ate the item. You don't say that he ate it all up. But rather we have to be fearful. Shemo, maybe the achbor nichoy left it b'chor b'chaloin, in the hole or in the window, and he didn't eat it. Ve'ela peruim sham hayu, and they were there from before. Therefore he has to check it again. And when motza klum, if he doesn't find anything, he has a problem. He has to check the whole house. And if he finds that which the achbor took in, he does not He doesn't have to make another bedika. Now we're learning Perek Beis Halacha Tes. Raw Tinoik. We go to the Peirush. If you saw a child, shenichlas lebayis bodik, went into a house that was checked, and he had and he had a bread in his house. And here again, he went in afterwards and he found crumbs. There, you don't have to worry about checking further. It's customary or it's usual, and there's a chazok she'ochlo, the child ate it. And these are the crumbs that fell from it. B'shas achilo, when a child eats, usually there are crumbs. Because a child will usually cause things to crumble while he's eating it. But an achbor eats the whole thing without leaving crumbs. That's why the crumbs before we do not worry about. The Machon Mishnah explains that the Rambam explains why there's a difference between the two situations. If he doesn't find any crumbs, so because the child hid it somewhere, and therefore he has to check again. The Machon Mishnah cites Psochim Yud Amud Aleph 10a Amarova. Rava says a achbor, a mouse, a rodent that went into a house, and he had a kikar, and he found pirurim. You need a bedika because it's not the way of an achbor to leave crumbs. Tinuk that went in, then he left crumbs. You don't need bedika. And he brings further that only when you can take all the crumbs to the size. There are those who say it's only when the crumbs equal the size of the kikar. And in other words, he didn't even eat it. But from the Rambam, it would seem when he says cheskosoi she'ochloi, it means he definitely ate it, and the crumbs are the leftovers. The Torah is of the opinion that if the perurim are as big as the amount that the achbor took in, you still have to check and again, because it's not the customary for an achbor to take something and cause crumbs, and therefore it must be from something else. So we finished Halacha Tes. Now we'll go to Halacha Yud. Here we're going to get into the question of where he left 9 stacks of matzah and 1 of chametz. Now, usually you can tell the difference between chametz and matzah in our times, but there was matzah in the times of the Chazal, which were not recognizably chametz or not, as we find by the korbanos minochos as well. Now, in this halacha, we're going to learn that if a rodent took, we don't know what he took, chametz or matzah, that's one rule. And if, when we're in doubt, do you have to check again, because it's only the rabbanon who can be lenient? Or is there a difference between a big kikar and a small kikar? And if It is a difference whether a rodent took it or a chulda. A chulda is a type of bigger, larger outdoor creature. So the Ram says, "Hiniach tishi tziburim." Tziburim, if you left 9 stacks shel matzah of matzah, ve'echad shel chometz, and one of chometz, u'ba'ach v'notal, and the rodent came and took it. Lo yadin danu im chometz v'matzah. When I can't tell whether he took chometz or matzah, v'nechos lebayis bodek, and he went to a house that was already checked. Now the question is, maybe he brought a matzah and he doesn't have to check it again, or he brought a chametz, he have to check it again. Therefore, you have to check it, because there's a rule, shekol kavua. Whenever something is taken from its place, as opposed to being found, is kemeftzal mechzadami, we always consider it half and half. The chances are 50-50, just like when you throw up a coin, it'll come down 50-50, either heads or tails, as many times as you throw it up or down. But if it's laying on the ground, then it's already either going to be heads or tails. The Magid Mishnah cites Psochim, Teson and Beis, as the source. If you have 9 stacks of matzah and one of chometz, and the Achba took one, we don't know if it's chometz or matzah. This is similar to 9 stores. And that then we learned in the Mishnah in Chulun, Tzadikei Omar A, 95A in Chulun, a city that has 9 stores that sell bosa kosher, and one store that sells bosa treif. And a person bought from one of the stores, he doesn't know which one he took it from. The meat is forbidden, because when he walked into the store, the chance is just as good that he walked into the treif store as he walked into the kosher store. However, if it's found in the street, then the majority of the stores are kosher, so you can assume it's kosher. This entire sugya, this question of how you deal with it, is found in Yuma 84b and Exubis 15a. The Rashi Psochim 9b mentions that you learn kol kavua. How do I know that something that's taken from a place is 50-50? What it says in Dvorim, Yutes 19:11, v'orev lo yikom olav, that if a person wanted to kill someone else and he hid from him to kill him. And we learn in Sanhedrin, Ayin Tes Aleph, that when he threw the stone on a group of people, and one of them was killed, and even if there are 9 Jews and 1 goy among them, we still consider it mechza al mechza. It's gay because the rock could hit any one of them, and therefore the chances are always the same for every one of the group. And also in Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, the Rambam paskins, whatever is in a set place, we always look at it as 50-50. The Ravid questions the Rambam's ruling that if it was taken from a stack, you have to check the whole house. He says, Loshen the Ravid, his language is Loi Mechavro Milso. It can't be that he has to check again because of Kol Kavua. Eliyim Bittul. The only question is not whether he has to check again, but whether he has to nullify again, because that's the Eraisa. Because regarding the Eraisa, Bittul is enough. We said Bedika is only required in Midrabanan. Avalinium Bediko, the Ravid says, but with regard to checking again, then after he was Mevatel the Chometz, so Midiraisa, go to the next page, it's enough to nullify. So therefore it's a suffix whether he's chayiv to be boidik, and then he doesn't have to sveged rabbanon. And when we have a questionable rabbanon, you don't have to, it's lekula. We always say that you do not have to do so. And therefore the Ravid is of the opinion that you should not have to check if he was mevatel. He can just be mevatel. The Magid Mishnah cites that Rashi, Rabbi Yitzchak Even Migash, so Migash, Even Geus, and other Rishonim hold like the Rambam. You do have to check again, and that's what it seemed from the Go'onim as well. And he brings from the Ra'ah that the reason why you should have to check again, because the entire setup of checking was only out of question. And therefore, whenever you have a question, the original edict is in place, and you have to do what the Rabbanan said, and therefore you don't say Sofik Rabbanan Lekula, even though there's a new Sofik involved, because the entire search is only a Sofik search. Where he knows with this chametz, he has to take it out for sure. Rabbeinu Manoach explains that here we're talking about an Issur D'Oraisa. The Rambam is not talking about the Rabbanan. If it would be the Rabbanan, he would say you don't have to check. That it's a question whether it's Chametz U'Matzah. It happened before he was Mavatal. He checked, but he did not nullify yet. And therefore, whenever you have a Seika or the D'Oraisa, it's L'chumra. And I like that Magid Mishnah that he says it's only the Rabbanan because he already was nullified Chametz. But Rashi explains in Psachim 9b that the 9 stacks of matzah, one of chametz, is just like the 9 stores, and that's the way he learns the sugya. And Tosfos asks a question: how could this be? The Reed doesn't like this explanation. How can he bring from Teisha Chanuyas? Because when we're talking about meat, whether it's kosher or treif, that's a Sofik D'Oraisa, and the Yeviyul Chumra. Whereas by Chometz, we should go Lekula because it's Drabanan to check. So, and Tosfos answers, we can say that it's talking where he was not he didn't nullify it, and therefore it remains a Sofik D'Oraisa. So it would seem, according to Tosfos, after Bittul, he would agree with the Ravid that you don't have to go into this because it's only Sofik D'Rabanan Lekula. It's interesting that the Ravid himself is of the opinion by 9 stacks you have to check because of Kavua, and not like what he writes here in his Hasoga on the Rambam. On the Baal HaMeir, the Ravid also has takes exception with the Baal HaMeir, and there he seems to be of the opinion like the Rambam. Now we understand what Rabbeinu Manoach says, that you have to check it again because the actual suffix is a deraisa, and therefore the bittul doesn't help because the Chachamim established their bedika on suffix chometz, and therefore whatever suffix you have, that's the way it was established. And the Ravid is of the opinion that bittul is enough, and once he was nullified it, he doesn't have to go ahead and check again, because the Chacham only obligated you before you nullified it, and therefore you make the brocha, and you only nullify after you've gone through the bedika. Now, is there a difference between a large bread or a small one? The Torah is states the Halalcha that if you have 9 stacks of matzah, one of chametz, that and a mouse took from them, and we don't know from which one he took. We go to the next page, and he went into a house that was checked. If the mouse took the kikor from a place that you have 9 stacks, if he nullified it, he's not obligated to check. But if the kikor is not large, even if he didn't nullify it, he's not chayav to check because the Achbar Misrabali ate it. So you have a double suffix. A, if it was chometz. B, even if it was chometz, Misrabali the Achbar ate it. But when it's a big piece of bread, then he wouldn't eat so much at one time. Therefore, he has to check. And it depends. Since he didn't nullify it, he's chayav livdoik. The Mishnah Lamelech infers from the Rambam that from what he does not differentiate between large and small, that the Rambam is of the opinion, like the Baal HaMeir, that the necessity to check is only according to Rab Zera, that the Chulda and Achbo that take meat eat it all. Whatever they take, they eat. But that's by meat. But when they take chometz, then they don't eat it all, and therefore you don't have a suffix of maybe ate it, because it's a big piece, then they would not eat it. If it's a small piece, they would have eaten it. Now, is it a difference if the Achbar took it or a chulda? As we said, the Achbar is a mouse, a house resident, whereas a chulda is of the same family, but it's an outdoor animal, and they bring down a thought that even according to Rava, who says that a chulda eats everything, but a rodent, a mouse, leaves over. And the Mishnah Lamelech disagrees because the Rambam doesn't make any differentiation, so we have to assume everything is the same. And even though he writes that Allah Achba took the kikor, from the fact that he didn't mention the chulda, we see that the Rambam is of the opinion that there's no difference between what animal took it. The Mishnah Melech further emphasizes that even though the Baal HaMeir and the Rambam say that the Achbar would eat the entire the entire piece, the Baal HaMeir disagrees that even if he was nullifies it, he has to be boiding misofik, because he holds like the Rambam Ravid that if he nullifies it, one does not have to check it. On a Sofik Bedika, we always say Sofik Rabban Lekula, but if he didn't check yet, that's when he would have to check his house. If he didn't nullify it, then he would have to check again his home. The next shiur we'll learn Peri Beis Halacha Yud Aleph.